The morning I found concrete barriers blocking my driveway for the third time that week, I immediately called my army buddy and said 5 words that would destroy our HOA president. I need something permanently immovable. December in Colorado, 6 a.m. I'm standing in my bathrobe, phone pressed to my ear while steam rises from my abandoned coffee mug. 3 concrete blocks positioned like prison walls across my own driveway. That sharp, metallic scent of fresh concrete mixing with diesel exhaust making my blood boil. Delila Thornberry thought she was harassing some helpless divorced veteran who'd roll over and pay her ridiculous fines. What she didn't know was that she'd just declared war on someone who'd spent 20 years moving tanks and artillery for Uncle Sam. For months later, she'd be screaming at news cameras about my aggressive concrete fortresses while packing moving trucks in disgrace. All because she never learned the first rule of warfare. Never corner someone with superior firepower and unlimited patience. What would you do if your neighbor weaponized bureaucracy against you? Drop your HOA horror story below. My name's Marcus Rivera, and 6 months before this concrete war erupted, I thought I'd finally found peace. 52 years old, freshly divorced after my ex cleaned out half my savings. With 20 years of moving tanks and artillery for Uncle Sam behind me, I'd scraped together enough for a down payment on this corner lot in Willowbrook Estates, suburban Denver, specifically because of that beautiful circular driveway. See, after 2 decades of following other people's orders, my little IT consulting business was my shot at independence. The circular driveway meant clients could park without blocking neighbors. I'd learned to think 3 steps ahead in the Army. I'd studied every legal document before buying. Deed restrictions, HOA covenants, municipal codes, nothing, and I mean nothing, prohibited home-based consulting. Then I met the neighborhood dictator. Delila Thornberry was 48, going on feudal lord with perfectly bleached teeth and a white Mercedes she polished like a shrine every Sunday. She lived in the McMansion at the end of the boulevard, the one with the circular fountain that violated 3 different water restrictions. HOA board president for 3 consecutive terms, which should have been a screaming red flag visible from space. Real estate agent by day, petty tyrant by calling. Our first encounter went down on a Tuesday morning in October. I'm loading network equipment into my F-150 when this woman just appears in my driveway. Didn't knock, didn't introduce herself, just materialized like a suburban demon clutching her clipboard of doom. You need to move that commercial truck immediately, she announced. Not even bothering with hello, I looked at my 3-year-old Ford, identical to half the driveways in the neighborhood. Ma'am, this is my personal vehicle, which you use for commercial purposes. She clicked her gold pen like a weapon. I've been documenting the traffic to your residence. Multiple vehicles per week. This disrupts our community standards. The stench of her cloying perfume, something that smelled like roses soaked in hairspray, made my eyes water. But it was her tone that really got me. That dismissive talking down to the hired help voice that instantly transported me back to every power-hungry officer I'd ever wanted to throttle. I'll review the covenants, I said, keeping my army poker face locked down. You do that? She turned on her designer heel, then paused. Oh, and Marcus, we run a tight ship here. Some people just aren't Willowbrook material. 3 days later, she dropped the hammer, a violation notice, demanding $150 for unauthorized commercial vehicle storage and threatening $500 daily fines if I didn't cease all business activities within 7 days. The letter was printed on official HOA letterhead, complete with legal threats that would make a loan shark blush. I spent my weekend at the kitchen table swimming through every document I'd signed. Deed restrictions, subdivision covenants, county ordinances, mountains of legal paper that said absolutely nothing about prohibiting home offices or client visits. But buried on page 47 of the HOA handbook, I found her weapon, a deliberately vague commercial vehicle clause written so broadly it could ban pizza delivery. When I called for an appeal hearing, her assistant chirped that the earliest opening was 6 weeks out. The fine deadline, still 7 days. Classic extortion. Pay up or face escalating penalties while you wait for justice. But Delila had made one crucial mistake. She tried to intimidate someone who'd spent 20 years dealing with actual life or death logistics problems. Someone who understood that bullies only respect superior firepower. So, I paid her blood money, filed the appeal, and made two strategic decisions. First, I was going to document everything she did from now on. Security cameras, timestamps, the works. Second, I was going to study this woman until I knew her weaknesses better than she did, because Delila Thornberry had just declared war on someone who specialized in winning wars through superior preparation and overwhelming response. The taste of that humiliation burned in my mouth for weeks. But every time I wrote another check to her HOA kingdom, I reminded myself, patience builds the strongest foundations, and I was about to build something she could never tear down. The security cameras I installed in November turned out to be the best investment I ever made. 4 high-definition units with night vision, positioned to cover every angle of my property. Within 2 weeks, they caught something that made my blood boil and sent chills down my spine at the same time. Delila Thornberry measuring my driveway with surveyor's tape at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I'm sitting in my kitchen the next morning, coffee growing cold in my hands, watching this footage on my laptop. The infrared cameras captured everything in crisp black and white. Her white Mercedes, parked 3 houses down like a getaway car. Those designer boots crunching through frost. That same clipboard, clutched against her chest as she documented dimensions and angles with the methodical precision of a crime scene investigator. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. She'd trespassed on my property, at minimum on the easement to gather ammunition for whatever legal assault she was planning next. The metallic taste of rage filled my mouth as I watched her measure the exact spots where my clients typically parked. But here's where Delila made her first catastrophic miscalculation. She had no idea I was documenting her every move. The confrontation erupted the next morning. I was loading network equipment when she approached, wearing that practice smile that could freeze hell over. "Marcus, we need to discuss your ongoing driveway situation." "Funny you should mention driveways," I said, keeping my voice conversational while my pulse hammered. I was just reviewing some fascinating security footage from last night. Didn't know midnight property surveying was such a popular hobby in Willowbrook. For exactly 3 seconds, her mask cracked. I caught a flash of genuine panic before that plastic smile locked back into place like armor plating. "I was conducting a routine community assessment," she said, her voice smooth as poisoned honey. "The board has received numerous complaints about your commercial activities disrupting residential tranquility." "Complaints from who specifically?" "That information is confidential board business." Of course it was. I pulled out my phone and showed her a crystal clear still frame from the cameras. Her crouched next to my driveway at midnight, measuring tape glinting in the infrared light like a weapon. This midnight assessment. That's also official board business because I've read our procedures manual cover to cover, and I must have missed the section about stealth property evaluations. Her jaw muscles tightened like steel cables. "You're being deliberately obstructive, Marcus. Some residents simply don't comprehend community standards or their obligations, and some board presidents don't comprehend property law." I leaned against my truck, letting that accusation hang in the frigid morning air. "But I'm always eager to learn. Walk me through exactly which covenant prohibits my consulting business." She launched into the same tired commercial vehicle rhetoric, but this time I was locked and loaded. I'd spent 3 sleepless nights researching Colorado HOA statutes, diving deep into case law and precedent. What I discovered would have made my old Army intelligence officers proud. In Colorado, HOA boards could only enforce covenants that were explicitly written and properly adopted through legal procedures. Vague interpretations and creative readings meant absolutely nothing in court. "That's absolutely fascinating," I said, savoring each word. "Because according to Colorado Revised Statute, Section 38-33-209, HOA enforcement requires specific covenant language. Boards cannot manufacture new restrictions through creative interpretation of existing rules." The temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees in the space between us. Her smile transformed into something sharp enough to cut glass. "We'll see about that interpretation," she said, each word dripping with menace. "Emergency board meeting, Thursday night, 7 p.m. sharp. Don't be late." Thursday nights Kangaroo Court was a masterpiece of bureaucratic theater. 5 board members arranged at a folding table in the community center like judges at a medieval tribunal, with Delila presiding over the proceedings like she was sentencing criminals. Maybe 15 residents scattered throughout the room, and I immediately noticed that none of them lived anywhere near my property. Delila opened with a PowerPoint presentation worthy of a congressional hearing, preserving community standards. In Willowbrook Estates, professional slides, dramatic lighting, complete with aerial photos of my house that made my modest corner lot look like some kind of industrial complex. As these documented images clearly demonstrate, she announced, clicking through slides with prosecutorial precision, we have irrefutable evidence of excessive vehicular traffic, commercial vehicle storage violations, and business activities fundamentally incompatible with residential community standards. Her photographic evidence was selectively brilliant. Camera angles that made my F-150 look like a semi-truck. She'd captured the one afternoon I had 3 client vehicles. Simultaneously, a scheduled emergency network repair that lasted exactly 97 minutes. When my turn finally arrived, I stood slowly and pulled out my own ammunition. Thank you for that presentation, Delila. I've prepared some supplementary materials. I distributed copies of the actual HOA covenants with relevant sections highlighted in bright yellow. Page 12 explicitly permits home-based businesses, provided they don't create documented nuisance conditions. Page 15 defines commercial vehicles as those exceeding 10,000 pounds gross weight. My truck weighs 6,200 pounds. I watched faces around the room as residents read the actual rules, probably for the first time since buying their homes. Several eyebrows shot up in obvious surprise. Additionally, I've meticulously documented my client visits over 3 months, average of 2.3 vehicles per week, visits averaging 47 minutes duration, well within reasonable parameters for professional services in any residential community. Delila's smile had fossilized into something resembling a death mask carved from ice. Finally, there's a significant procedural issue with tonight's meeting. Our bylaws require 72-hour written notice to all homeowners for emergency sessions. This meeting was announced Monday evening via email exclusively, a clear violation of Colorado HOA statutes. The room exploded in whispered conversations as homeowners realized they'd been systematically excluded from proper notification. 2 board members exchanged glances that suggested they hadn't known about the notice requirements either. Delila banged her gavel like she was hammering railroad spikes. This meeting will proceed exactly as scheduled regardless of frivolous procedural objections. Actually, interrupted a calm voice from the back row. I believe we need to table this discussion until proper legal notice is provided to all affected parties. Frank Kowalski rose slowly from his seat, 70 to some, with silver hair, and the sharp eyes of someone who'd spent decades in courtrooms. I've been reviewing the statutes Marcus cited, and his procedural objections are absolutely correct. This meeting violates multiple requirements. That moment changed everything. I'd found my first ally in what I now understood would be a very long, very expensive war. Frank's intervention killed Delila's kangaroo court faster than pulling a fire alarm. Board members scattered like roaches when the lights came on, mumbling about proper procedures and rescheduling. But I watched Delilah's face as the room emptied, and what I saw there made my blood run cold. Pure concentrated hatred, radiating from those perfectly lined eyes like heat from molten steel. She wasn't done with me. She was just getting started. The next escalation hit exactly 1 week later at 6:17 a.m. and it was designed to destroy me financially and emotionally in one calculated blow. I stumbled outside in my bathrobe for my morning coffee run and found an empty driveway where my truck should have been. Not stolen. Something worse. Towed. A bright orange violation sticker was slapped across my garage door like a death certificate. Illegally parked vehicle removed per HOA authority. Final notice. The paper was still warm from whatever printer had birthed this bureaucratic assassination. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial the towing company. The dispatcher's voice dripped with the special indifference reserved for people whose lives had just been upended. Vehicle removed from Willowbrook Estates for parking violation. Release fee $350 plus $25 per day storage. Cash or certified check only. No exceptions. I was parked in my own driveway. I said, my voice cracking like a teenager's. Take it up with your HOA, buddy. We just follow orders. Orders. That word hit me. Like a physical blow. 20 years following legitimate military orders. And now some suburban tyrant was issuing commands. About my own property. Frank Kowalski appeared at my door 20 minutes later with coffee and the grim expression of someone who'd seen this movie before. The drive to the impound lot felt like a funeral procession, complete with Frank explaining Colorado's towing statutes in his measured attorney voice. Legitimate HOA towing requires 48-hour written notice, he said, navigating through morning traffic, posted warnings in violation areas, photographic documentation, board approval for each removal. Did you receive any advance notice? Nothing. Parked there Sunday night, same as always. Frank made careful notes in his leather portfolio. Then what happened to you constitutes predatory towing under Colorado law. The penalties for that can be severe, up to treble damages plus attorney fees. The impound lot was a monument to human misery. Gravel and razor wire, the acrid smell of motor oil mixing with desperation, and my truck sitting behind chain link like a political prisoner. $350 in cash, money that was supposed to cover groceries for 2 weeks, and I was reunited with my vehicle while Frank documented everything with his phone camera. The drive home was silent except for the sound of my financial security crumbling. That evening, I was uploading photos of the illegal towing when my doorbell chimed. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson stood on my porch with a casserole dish, and the expression of someone bearing witness to an atrocity. Marcus, honey, I saw what that horrible woman did to your truck. I had to bring you something. Eleanor was 76, had buried her husband 3 years ago, and possessed the kind of quiet dignity that made you want to confess your deepest fears. She handed me a dish that smelled like childhood comfort and maternal love. Exactly what my shattered nerves needed. Mrs. Patterson, you didn't need to. Yes, I did. Her voice carried steel beneath the kindness. Because what Delila did to you, what she's been doing to all of us, it's evil, pure and simple. She told me about the Kelly's swing set execution. How Delila had demanded they dismantle their children's playground within 48 hours for violating aesthetic harmony guidelines. Guidelines that existed nowhere in our actual covenants. How little Sarah Kelly had cried watching her father take apart her favorite place in the world while Delila watched from her Mercedes, taking photos like she was documenting a crime scene. They couldn't fight it, Eleanor whispered, glancing around as if Delila might be listening from the shadows. Danny Kelly works 2 jobs just to make the mortgage. They don't have lawyer money or fight left in them. The metallic taste of rage filled my mouth. How many others? More than you'd think. The Garcas got fined for their vegetable garden. The Johnsons for their dog run. She's been systematically terrorizing anyone who doesn't fit her vision of suburban perfection. After Ella Laner left, I sat in my darkened kitchen, eating her casserole and planning war. Because that's what this had become. Total war against a woman who used bureaucracy as a weapon of mass destruction. I spent 3 hours researching predatory towing penalties. In Colorado, victims could recover 3 times actual damages plus attorney fees. My $350. Theft could cost Delila over $1,000 if I played this right. But more importantly, I started a new computer file. Delila Thornberry. Financial vulnerabilities. If she wanted to hit me where it hurt, I was about to return the favor with interest. My security cameras delivered the perfect gift the next morning. Delila's Mercedes parked outside my house at 6:23 a.m. with her taking surveillance photos of my property, building her next case, documenting ammunition for whatever fresh hell she was planning. But those photos also captured her license plate, her face, and the timestamp proving systematic harassment. The hunter had just become the hunted. Delila's surveillance photos turned out to be the opening shot of what I can only describe as psychological warfare. She wasn't just building a case anymore. She was orchestrating a full-scale character assassination designed to turn my own neighbors against me. The attack came 2 days later in the form of a glossy flyer that appeared in every mailbox on our street. Professional layout, high-quality photos, and the kind of inflammatory headline that would make a tabloid editor weep with envy. Protect our community. The truth about commercial operations in residential. Willowbrook. I'm standing in my driveway at 7 a.m., the sharp morning air burning my lungs while I held this piece of propaganda with hands trembling between rage and disbelief. She'd weaponized her real estate marketing skills to create a hit piece that would have impressed Stalin's propaganda ministry. Photos of my truck taken from deceptive angles that made it look like a commercial fleet. Fabricated quotes from concerned neighbors about declining property values and disrupted neighborhood tranquility. The crown jewel was a picture of my house with the caption, "Is this the residential character we want to preserve in Willowbrook Estates?" Frank appeared beside me like a silver-haired, avenging angel, clutching his own copy of the character assassination. The smell of his morning coffee mixed with the crisp December air as he studied the flyer with a prosecutor's eye. "This crosses every legal line," he said quietly. "Defamation, targeted harassment, possibly legal, depending on those."